make sure to announce that.
Recording is on.
Okay, there it is. Recording has started.
Hey guys.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hi.
I guess we will wait a few minutes more, huh?
Yeah, I think I missed something interesting around legal liability.
Oh, hey, how's it going? Yeah, so it was funny because one of the members, I think Jorgensen, he mentioned we should get an attorney on here on the board to see what's going on. They just chimed in, oh, hey guys, I'm actually an attorney. So yeah, I am researching the legal aspects of the legal liabilities around it, and my goal is to try to make some type of best practices, because the legal landscape is very much, it's the Wild West, and there's very little guidelines so far, but there is some type of kind of best practices we should take into consideration. So yeah, we were just talking about that.
Great to have you here. What's your name?
Thanks. Oh, my name is Bobby.
I missed that.
Bobby. B-O-B-B-Y.
Cool.
Nice to meet you, Bobby.
Name's Ingemar.
Thanks. Nice to meet you guys too.
So some people are having trouble with the PeerPad. I was noticing that sometimes it takes a little bit to load for me, like it'll be blank, but then if you give it a few minutes, it'll pop up. I don't know, maybe it's just a time thing, but not sure.
Yeah, true. It just updated in my part.
Nice. Oh yeah, Corcus just posted the items that we have on the PeerPad. Anything else that people wanted to address today? I figured the budgeting compensation would be enough to warrant most of the call. But yeah, I think maybe we can get started. We'll start with these product updates. Mesa, the latest release was deployed. There was a proposal, I think it passed last night, to set the content hash on the ENS resolver. And there's a few updates. I think the main thing is that it now is actually referencing the TCR from DXdao, which I guess technically is not a token curated registry, since there's no token voting. Particularly, it's actually the reputation voting for the DAO. So I guess if we're being technical, it's a DAO curated registry, and that's being referenced now in the Mesa front end. And the DMG token, which was added in a separate proposal, is now listed in front of it, clearing the way for DMM to do their issuance on Gnosis Protocol and showing up in Mesa. And it sounds like their plans are to do that on June 22nd. Maybe Matt, I don't know if you wanted to chime in on the DMM stuff while we're talking about Mesa.
Hey guys, no, just as you said, so they wrapped up the first tranche, and the Mesa public sale slated for June 22nd. I know they're now kind of taking the run up to that more seriously, or will become more public. So I think they'll correspond with the DXdao in the coming days and weeks, or for sure in the coming days, just to get everybody on the same page. And I think, yeah, it should actually drive a lot of eyes to Mesa. They're kind of stepping up the publicity front. That they haven't done that yet. So that is all the details will also be disclosed, or I guess we kind of did go over them last week in the DX Biz side chat. So yeah, pretty much it.
Yeah, that would be great to see. I know like the Gnosis Challenge kind of we haven't really been meeting the trading volume that would be needed to reach that. So it would be great to see some activity. I know another thing on the Mesa side, Yuri, I don't think he's on the call, but he was trying to facilitate some trading with the Ukrainian stablecoin. And he's onboarded some people and been providing updates in DAO Talk. So that's interesting to see as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything
really
else
cool.
on Mesa? Hello? Anything else that people want to add on Mesa?
About Yuri, I feel like he needs help in somehow, but like I don't really know how best to do it, because what he's doing is really like grassroots, and he's like trying to onboard people, users. I don't know the best way to support him, but I feel like we should in some form. That's all.
Yeah. I don't know how we could, but maybe ask him. Maybe he would have some ideas. You can always bring him on chat. Or,
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Moving on to Omen. Geronimo, do you want to give the update there?
Yep. So, as expected, there is a delay with finalizing V1, and the main reason is because once you actually want to launch something, stuff come up you didn't thought about before, like an FAQ and just like polishment. For example, we still showed realit.io as an arbitrator, which doesn't make sense because it's basically like one guy with a key, so it doesn't make sense to show it. And then we need to like do like emergency, not emergency, but we need to make changes, and those need to be tested. But we're like one issue away from having a final test version out, and then the only thing needs to be done is actually like create markets and do the final code freeze test version. So we need to test it again, but then there's a high chance that this will be the final version, and this is going to happen hopefully today, that we do code freeze and will not touch it anymore. Yeah, that's it.
Do you have a date in mind that we could like consider this?
Yeah, so
prepare for.
If we have the final test version out today, or via like simply reachable via test domain, and we tested 3 days and there are like no major fuck ups we encounter, then there's like a good chance that at the beginning of next week is the time when Omen will be live, I believe. But that's up to the testing version. Like I tested it a lot these days. I created a lot of issues, and I feel comfortable that it is definitely releasable and it looks good and it feels good. So let's just hope we don't find major bugs. And in terms of like V2, it's kind of funny that we release V1 and actually have like basically everything ready for V2 already. So this is something I'm going to prepare. Like I don't want to have like one V2 version release, but rather like an incremental task packages to fix areas inside the app. So small improvements in different areas, well defined with designs, with playgrounds. So we may even have like we even attach a price to it, so new developers can like see what needs to be done. The designs are there, the code is there. The only thing they need to do is like say they want to work on that. They see what they will get out of it, and then actually deliver the work, and the DAO will approve the payments for that. So that's my plan for the next days, to prepare like V2 packages for new developers, or even like Protofire. Like someone needs to do it. I don't care who's going to do it. It would be awesome that new developers are like joining the game, and the less friction we provide, the better. So like having a complete definition of what needs to be changed, the designs, everything should be there. They should just need to like code it up.
Geronimo, when you say that everything is ready for V2, do you mean the designs are ready for V2? I mean, I assume
the designs are ready for V2.
The code still needs to be implemented.
Exactly.
I assume, because otherwise we would release that. Yeah.
And also, like one thing we can discuss already in this call is, I think it doesn't hurt to include a front end fee in Omen actually as soon as possible. Just I believe because it will be a good like test case for us to build products which actually make money. Like most of the VC funded startups, they have a long runway and they can build products which don't earn money at the beginning for a long time, and then they just enable it. But we can also like explore to actually like, once even like V1 is released, we can enable some fee structure. And I would think about like not for liquidity providers, but just buyers and sellers of outcomes. So like bettors, they can pay like a very small fee. Depend like what the fee will be, we need to discuss. But the fact that Omen is using a Gnosis Safe means we can actually like just include this action inside the transaction, like inside this batch transaction. So the fee would probably go to the DXdao, sadly, because if they pay the fee in DAI, the bonding curve can't deal with DAI. But what we can make sure is that we will make like a contract, a social contract, that anything which will go to the DAO will be like sent to the bonding curve by exchanging it into ETH or something at some point in time. So like it needs every revenue we need to make, we're going to make, it should go always to the bonding curve. If that's not possible, we need to like have like a contract ready to like a on-chain contract or like a social contract to make sure that it is like just an intermediary, the DXdao, and the DXdao will make sure that ETH will be sent to the bonding curve at some point.
Hero, about that, 100%. Like I think there is a way where we can implement like micro fees, inclusive like something that it will be near a zero for the user, but with a high amount of fees, we can start experimenting with receiving some revenue and start moreover start testing the revenue flow in the DXdao, right? We already have a process for that, but yeah, we don't have any funds in production to start testing it. So even adding like a micro fee on the front end level, it will be awesome to start playing with how the revenue is going to flow, and then we can raise the fee if we want, or at least we show how the revenue is going to be working.
And like one good reason to have a front end fee is because then the contracts are like pure and not like, okay, it's a DXdao owned contract. If we actually include a on-chain fee inside the contract, this will need to be discussed later on, but it could be a base layer for any other product. So it's like a fair game for any other team who's building front ends like sport betting, esports, that they can also like use the exact same contracts and like have their own front end fees because they make sure that the front end is up and running. And one other thing is only like ERC20 tokens need to go to the DXdao as an intermediary, but pure ETH, like a WETH, can go to the bonding curve. So we could enable direct flow to the bonding curve with people betting with ETH, which is cool. Like, but like I don't think there's no any reason to not do it.
Yep, I agree.
Geronimo, you mentioned one of the steps is to make the markets, right? And so we have a list of lots of markets, and we can already put markets on the system. We want when it launches, you want a handful, like let's say at least 5 or 10 markets that like we think people would be highly interested in. And I think Martin just shared this morning that Gnosis was going to put $100,000 behind at least 3 markets, and DXdao could pick one of those markets, and I think Gnosis would create and put liquidity behind 2 markets that they choose. So obviously, once this is live, even right now, anyone can create a market, but hopefully we want 5 or 10 good ones on there that have some funding behind them. So the question is, how do we determine those 5 or 10? We could vote on this list somehow. How do we put who wants to put the markets up onto Omen? Probably better to have someone internationally do that. And then how do we get liquidity funding into those markets for some amount? And could DXdao provide some of that liquidity, or would it be individual people providing that? Because that would help with a good launch for when it goes live, I think. But those things need to be figured out. I don't know if anyone has any suggestions.
Yeah, so Gnosis, like it's difficult for the DXdao because of time constraints to like ratify a proposal and like even send funds to someone who's doing like creating markets and stuff. I think like we previously discussed, like making challenges is something interesting. It could also like drip rep to new liquidity providers, and we could even like grow the community. This is something we can do. Kleros, based on the proposal they made and which got approved, needs to make markets. Like this is what they promised, because they are the default arbitrator, so they need to do the their job here. And this is something we should discuss like as soon as possible once this test version is out, which is exactly for the purpose to like people should create markets to be ready for main launch. And so Gnosis and Kleros will be like the big players who like I believe are ready to put like bigger amounts in it, but we can also make sure that
What about the creation of the markets? Let's say we can incentivize there's going to be some people known and we can incentivize liquidity, but what do you think about the process of putting the markets onto Gnosis, like onto Omen? Is there someone on this call that would like to do that, just to put them on, or?
Yeah, so
sure.
Yeah, like I think there will be a lot of outside contributors. It's interesting that we don't think about like reaching out to like Augur people. And they're kind of like Augur maximalists, but nevertheless, like if they're at the end of the day, those people are like interested in betting, and if we allow them to bet on interesting questions, then they will kind of start using Omen too. So like maybe like a direct like a media outreach to those communities also like very interesting and should be considered. But I also think inside DXdao there will be like liquidity providers, because I think it is not like Uniswap put it in there and you like making money dollars, but it's like I think it is kind of like a professionality. Like you need to know what markets are interesting, what will be successful, and also like when to jump ship. So like remove the liquidity to not get like punished. So it's like a more active observing mode. There are also like markets where outcomes could be like, because like some president is dying like today, and like a lot of stuff is shifting, and those liquidity providers need to be ready to get the stuff out, to not get like punished because they're not like managing their liquidity. So it is not like Uniswap. We need to make sure that our liquidity providers do know the risk, and it's this is also like our job to communicate.
For that reason, there was a suggestion that we should only start with binary markets because it's easier to handle that situation with just two outcomes.
100%. And this was also like one code change we did, is to start with only binary. Based on Gnosis's like experience, those are nevertheless like the most successful and easy to understand markets. It's yes or no. It's simple. For V1, it's fine. Let's see when we enable more outcomes. And I totally agree. I think that's best V1.
And there is common knowledge that like political markets are some of the most popular, and that's, I believe, Site's focus is on political markets at first. So we could also have some. We should also have some political markets, but I think that means that like a popular one is who will win the 2020 United States presidential election. And right now you see ones where it says like Donald Trump, Joe Biden, other. So you can't have that market. Instead, you have to have, will Donald Trump win the presidential election, yes or no? And then will Joe Biden? So you separate them. Is that correct?
Yes. That's sadly, yeah. So there will be like 4 markets for each person, and either Trump or others, or no, whatever.
Well, yes or no.
Yeah.
Will this person win? Yes or no.
Exactly.
Okay, so that if you break it up like that, well, I guess that's just 2. But that like,
who will have a higher vote percent? Like who will win more electoral votes? You could say like out of those 2.
No, but you may need the other.
Well, the question is saying out of these 2, who's going to have more? You could still do it.
Okay. That's definitely possible.
That's very
But so I think that question, like, it needs to be funded well. Like those 4, in terms of like presidential election, like it's definitely important, and I think those will be one of the more attractive markets on Omen.
Yeah,
I agree.
And so as a community, and we did this a little bit with picking Panvala cluster backing entities, but like we have a list of, let's say, 50 or 60 potential markets. If someone or a couple people pick the 10 that we think would really be good and propose those 10, and then people can say yes or no to some of those, like make sure the language is right for all those and the dates and stuff, and say like, these are 10 that we would love to have on there at launch, and we can put those on today, and then hopefully maybe find volunteers or people that would create those. Is that like a good way to start with at least 10 good ones?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, because obviously anyone can make anything they want, and there's been discussion of like, people are going to just put stuff on there, and probably like a lot of them, the language might not be right, or like it might not be binary. So I think that personally, assuming gas cost isn't like super crazy, you're going to get like hundreds of markets on there, and like 90% of them are going to be like kind of shitty. That's usually what happens in like this type of world, and those float to the bottom very quickly. And then the 10% that are like good, that have good funding, that have good interest, float to the top, and our filter hopefully shows those important ones at the top. but no matter what, I think that's going to happen. So like, we want the 10 that we create to be hopefully the good ones that like show at the top, because that will increase interest, I would guess.
100%.
Cool.
Yeah, I think like one thing we could do is kind of merge those two spreadsheets we had from the Telegram group and the Keybase group, and then like add a column where we can like hopefully someone is like everyone is fair and like just adds a dot to some raw, which means like a market. So that way we could like see what people think. What is like the most interesting markets?
Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'll try to put some order to it, because some on there like aren't going to be good for long. There's a lot on there that are not binary, and then there's like they're like 15-year ones, and like when we're going to be on Mars and stuff like that. So like those are interesting, but I don't think those are like ones to lead with. So I'll try to put some structure to it, and then put a column that people can vote on.
Totally. Yeah, totally. And maybe like even just pick for your like point of view the best ones, and then see if we can even like, if they're not binary, we make them binary, and then just pick the 10 best one and like provide liquidity as best as we can.
And does it make sense to share that in the Omen Keybase, not in Telegram?
Both. We need all communities working together here.
Okay.
Because I actually expect now more from the investors community, that they have like liquidity providers, and like I expect that they will help us.
Cool.
Great. Should we move on to budgeting compensation? I think there's like kind of, maybe they're very related, but they're also two separate topics. And one is, if you take a look at our treasury and our products of the DXdao, like what is the plan, right? Like what gets prioritized, where does the money get allocated, how much runway are we aiming for? These are the types of questions that would need to get answered at a high level. Chris Powers did a pretty good post. I don't know if he's the Chris on the call, but he did a pretty good post on DAO Talk with a spreadsheet kind of outlining how everything could tie together. And then obviously related to that is, how does DXdao compensate people doing work for DXdao? There's questions around how does that get ramped up, like how much of it is reputation versus ETH versus DXD, what are the market rates, etc. So I mean, I'll just open the floor, and people feel free to kind of chime in where they want.
Yeah, something that I wanted to add, I created a DAO Talk post on guidelines of how to estimate compensations for workers. I want to remark the word estimation, where it doesn't mean that when you calculate something based on those guidelines, means that it's final. The idea, I think one of the goals here, and what been happening this week, is that we want to start projecting and taking long-term decisions or actions, or where are we going to behave as an organization, right? Having in mind that we have limited funding, and it's a decentralized global organization, that we shouldn't be, like, for example, taking in account a statistic from certain places, for example, like cost of living from, I don't know, Germany, or only from Germany, or only from Argentina, or rate salaries only from the US, from India, right? Where we want to find something attractive in the global perspective, where we can attract developers from all around the world, hopefully, right? So this is a good thing about our organization. That is over the internet, is decentralized. It has no barriers. We have yet for now no government agency pursuing us, so we can do. We have a lot of freedom to choose and accept people from all over the world who wants to work with us. And yeah, also we wanna. I think it's a heads up. Today was a heads up. This week was a heads up for okay. What are we going to? How are we going to manage our funds? How much are we going to spend in development? So is development going to be the major expense of our organization? Seems like it's going to be. So yeah, curious to hear about people on this call their opinion on budgeting and compensation, if they agree with what we have shared with John regarding budgeting and compensation.
I have just something to add. So the DXdao, we did raise a good chunk of money, and also there is no real consensus on like when we'll start seeing revenue coming in. I mean, like that's developing, but for a while now we haven't had like a consensus on that. We have no consensus on like when we'd be able to have revenue from our products like sustain developers. So like, you know, there is a limit, there is like a cliff for this stuff, and like I look at DXdao as more of a passion project than like a way to earn a living necessarily. I think it's a great that's why like I'm willing to get paid below like market rate, and this is just like for me, I'm just one guy, because like there's things in it that I believe in, and you know I have alternative sources of income, so like I'm able to do that, and you know to do that.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that one of the good things about having rates under, for example, like more of the higher rate, for example, that U.S. markets, right? They are the maybe one of the highest paid markets in the world. Like, of course, I think it is clear that the DXdao cannot match it without sustaining for more than a year, right? So, and one of the things of that is that I think it's going to attract people who is really passionate and interested in what they are doing and feel the challenge of working for a decentralized organization. A lot of things that are happening here are happening for the first time. Like, I think that if we take the payroll of the people who is being paid by the DXdao next month, and we take where they are placed in the world, we are going to have a surprise, seeing how spread the team is and how it's working. So
to address like the revenue and the consensus around that, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that the DXdao wants to generate revenue. I think the questions are compensated by the DXdao so far, and some others have earned a little bit far under like what we'd actually be getting in our markets. And you know, a lot of us were involved prior to the fundraise when there was literally no money in the DXdao, And sure, $1 million came in over 10 days, but that doesn't mean, in my mind, that we should start spending it at a high rate immediately. I think it's important that we take the time to assess the priorities, the budget, and to transition into a higher spend rate. Like, I don't think we want to be spending like it's infinite amounts of money. $1 million could be burned through very quickly with a decent sized group and several projects. So, I think whatever we do, it's very important to proceed kind of gradually and deliberately. And I also think it's very important that we attract and retain people who are very passionate about the mission of the DXdao. In my mind, that is decentralization first, DeFi products, bringing decentralization to DeFi products, and experimenting in the world of DAOs and governance. So, I think we want to attract people who really believe in that and are here for the long haul. I'm sure with $1 million, yeah, we could hire people, we could pay market and competitive rates for a little bit, but we got to think long term.
Yeah, that's one of the things. Do we have to think long term? Because we are pushing that idea, but I think that most of the community agrees with that. But yeah, this is a place. I think this is a place to discuss. So if someone has a strong disagreement with that or with anything that is being discussed, this is a more public forum. And yeah, so don't feel you have all the freedom here to speak, so to say your opinion. But
it's also interesting to see that we kind of have issues right now. Like we need to discuss this very difficult and important question, like budgeting and salaries, and this is just like there's no perfect solution for anything in that, like in salary and geographical location, blah. And like we put our salaries very low, just like because we never expected to have any ETH. Like I never expected to have so much ETH into the bank.
More money, more
and
problems.
Now,
yeah,
exactly. Like I would love to just fucking be on GitHub and make PRs and commits. But now we need to talk about it, and that's okay. We need to deal with that, and I think that's actually like great. So yeah, like one thing we should or could do is increase our salary, which is probably like then in a more realistic future, like it probably makes sense to increase it, because then we don't feel like we getting fucked here, because like other teams just like are realistic here and just like put up numbers in there which are realistic to the realistic US market or something, and then like we're like we're not supporting it because it's just like 1/3 of the, like let's talk about like the mix example. Good people requested normal rates based on the US. We have different rates because we define it just low because we wanted to like support the DXdao and we believe in the mission. So how do we fix that now? Like, should we adjust our salary and then make sure that any US team could also like apply for projects?
Yeah, I want to.
Jump in. Okay.
Just kind of quickly, 'cause I feel like there's kind of a couple different conversations I think going on, because this is it's got a lot of threads running. I mean, I think first and foremost we're talking about philosophically, like what should the DXdao be doing with compensation in general, and that's like an important conversation. And then I think we're talking about like what's the structure for how the DXdao makes financial decisions, whether that's like the actual, on-chain voting, or whether that's like a budget and, how that's structured. And then I think thirdly, we're discussing like specifically the existing team that has been working on the DXdao and kind of been putting all the efforts in the last, to get these products up to speed and get the fundraise. And like, that's kind of a concern. And then I think we're talking about, well, how do we fund things? How do things get funded going forward? And I think one of the things in the post that I had in the DAO talk I thought was important was the difference between like recurring costs and like project-based compensation. So I think the Mix ETH is a great example of like DXdao is looking for a developer group of some sorts to build Mix.ETH, have like an idea of what it wants to be. There's already kind of something there. I think there should be some type of open bidding process for any developer group to say how much they're going to charge as a whole, as a project, and then like what they're going to do. And I don't think I don't think the DXdao should care that much about like how that group pays their developers. To the DXdao, it should just be like, what's the overall cost and like, what's the quality of the work? And so I think in general, I think we should try to move towards like the project-based compensation, because then we're not talking as much about like individual compensation and like kind of how it affects all of that. Having said that, I do think it's important that there should be some recurring cost, and I do think it's important that there is kind of not everything kind of ad hoc basis, and that's why I think looking at the existing team that's kind of been working, I think there's one conversation of like, okay, how do we codify that or make that into something that is continues throughout the duration? And then the separate is like, well, how does DXdao fund and make decisions on new projects?
Yes. One thing about that, Chris, is that right now it's like, for example, we had the Mix proposal, which is public, and it looks like it has been, it wasn't rejected by DXdao, but it has like a strong feedback against the budget that they were requesting. So right now that is public, and any team from any part of the world can take that proposal, make changes, edit it, and propose another budget on another team, and bid against the first proposal on Mix ETH. I think that in few months we are going to see counter proposals against that, because again, the project is open source. We have the design, we have the resources, the idea is there. We are going to be seeing counter proposals, and eventually the DAO is going to pick the one who think that it's with the most qualified and cost effective, right? Like, okay, if we can go with a senior developer from another part of the world who is going to cost us the half of these senior developers are costing, why wouldn't we do it? Why wouldn't we protest our budget interests? And yeah, this can make a lot of people peace, like saying, hey, no, but I'm in the I don't know, I'm in the Bahamas and I'm working from here. I want to collaborate. I want to get paid. Yeah, this is a global market on a centralized organization. This is what it takes to work on something like this. Like, if you really want to work here, maybe you should put your economic interests aside. So, I
think that. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I guess I'm saying I don't think the DXdao should be concerned about how much people get paid per hour. I think they should be concerned about paying for a final product and like how much is that final product worth it. And I think when and that's why I think it's important to have the philosophical discussions about like the direction where the community wants to go, because that will factor into which bids are selected, right? But I think, I think it's important to have the guidelines, but I want those not to like restrict the DAO from really doing, from engaging with other groups when it's just kind of like I want to pay for X and like how much does it cost?
Exactly, but it's actually like the DXdao, it's at the end paying for hour, because when you propose, you propose a budget based on the time. And the DXdao and developers can get an idea, okay, how much are these developers being paid, and how much are we paying these developers to work on this project. And there can be, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but on the technical side of things, and the developers who are going to be analyzing the proposal that are very active in DXdao, they are going to come up with a number. Okay, they are being paid this much per hour. I don't think it's something that the DXdao can afford. I would love to afford it.
And I think your point is like if you look at proposals, they're just like hourly rates. Right? It's like, it's going to take me this long to do it. It's just an hourly rate. So yeah, I think that's and so I know that that's going to be like the decision that's being made. It's just more of it. Maybe I would guess you would say maybe the reason it's not is not because this is DXDAO's like labor standard, but more of like, this is just too expensive and we want to use this other group who's like more interested. But a lot of it is semantics, I think.
Yeah, and also to your like this very important philosophical question, like, should the DAO have some kind of core team, which means like some team which, like, right now we felt that this is necessary to have like full-time people and like jump around stuff, to fix stuff, to do like basically everything the DXdao needs to move forward. But like my personal hope is that there shouldn't be a core team, and like I want to have like a proposal defined what I want to go to deliver, and it should be delivered, and then based on what I delivered, like people can put up rates of how good I was, right? And with this dynamic proposals, we kind of need to do everything, which is not healthy for us first, and like second, it is also signal to the open market that we kind of, there's someone handling everything, which is wrong, because we shouldn't handle everything. So like at some point, hopefully pretty soon, we shouldn't have dynamic proposals where we like say we do everything we can for the DXdao, because it's unhealthy for us and unhealthy for the DXdao.
Yeah, exactly. I think,
and we're just kind of going off the budget we have now. Like tomorrow, another crazy bull run could happen. Like I know it's unlikely, but this, we're trying to like adapt to like the treasury we have. So
yeah, I do think that treasury, like for instance, the treasury management conversation should come downstream from the budget conversation, right? Because that's, you want to manage your treasury around like what your costs will be going forward. So I think like then, for instance, like the next 2 or 3, like 2 months, I have no idea, may have less costs than like the 4 or 5 months after that, and that would have some effect on how your treasury management. The one other thing I wanted to touch on is I think that I think issuing DXD as compensation for individuals or projects should be an important part, or a part of compensation, because it aligns interest between those individuals, and it gives them potential upside. And I think that would be a way where like, oh, well, I've got some upside and maybe on DXD, so that would they'd be able to have a smaller compensation, and then perhaps they'd be more motivated to work and kind of engage with it after. So I know that that's kind of something that the DXdao has investing DXD, I think, but just kind of curious to get people's thoughts on how that should fit into this.
Yeah, I know Augusto had some examples of like options for developers to get compensated like directly in ETH, or like doing half ETH, half DXD, and some rep. And like I feel like there could be some like really solid options to kind of like fit everyone's interests and investment in the DAO.
Yeah, I think the DXdao right now, it has a lot of DXD at hand, right? So this is DXD that we can inject it gradually into the market by compensating developers, and also engage, also making sure that they are going to be engaged, in the DXC, in the DXdao in the long term. So yeah, I think issuing reputation and DXD for compensation is very important, and it's even more attractive. I mean, the more DXD and reputation that is issued alongside financial compensation like Ether or DAI or any other financial compensation that we wanna do, is attractive for our proposal. For example, for a compensation, like if you say, yeah, I want to receive my salary in Ether and a part in DXD and 0.5 reputation per month, that is the default reputation that let's say that is going to be issued per month. That will be the perfect mix to know that worker is going to be active in DXdao using his reputation, and also in a DXdao community economic environment, like it's going to be all surrounded by DXD, by holding and injecting DXD gradually into the market. So
yeah, I think something that's important to be conscious of when on the topic of issuing DXD is the market, right? Like there's DXD holders out there that are effectively investors in DXdao. If you look at the curve, the price on the curve is the mid price essentially, right? And I actually think it would be irresponsible of the DXdao to be distributing DXD when the market price, which you could see on Loopring or whatever, is significantly below the mid price, right? Because essentially a bunch of investors paid on average half of what the mid price is. So if the market price like it is today is below the average, and we were to, as like the DXdao was like not flood the market, but even just issue DXD from the pre-mint, I think it's sort of irresponsible from the perspective of the DXD holders, because you're putting sell pressure onto the DXD, which is already trading well below what the average price was paid off of the minting.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think the sell pressure is very real.
One simple option is to just make sure that people have vesting contracts. So just like a 3 months vesting, which will drip to the user, and they can sell in chunks, which is fine. Like I think right now the liquidity is like embarrassing, and it's like understandable because we are not doing anything to do like besides our investors to push liquidity forward. There's also an interesting aspect, like once we have DXSwap, we could discuss liquidity provision on DXSwap for DXD and ETH, and then we could even like help liquidity to provide liquidity. And like another cool thing is we could like set fees on that pool, so which would like go to the bonding curve again.
And another thing is that the DXD that we are calling this 100,000 DSD, they are on a vesting schedule, right? So they are going to be vested, I think, for 3 years now. So DXdao cannot, they cannot be printing DXD from the start, right? They need to claim it from the token vesting, and there are going to be a limited amount of DXD that can be used per month. So yeah, that's another thing that we should have.
Yeah, I think I think it's not something that should be done like soon. It's kind of everyone's saying. It's just more of when people talk about compensation and they're like, well, it seems like you guys are paying less than everyone else. Just talking about how DXD and rep fit into the overall equation, I think is helpful for like for I guess like budgeting and just the financial side of it. But yeah, I mean, you think of some other projects and I guess more blockchains, like they have so much sell pressure when they launch because of all of their investors, right? So all their investors got into some pre-sale or and like for the next year, I mean, Algorand is like probably the best example, but all of those newly block stacks, all of those newly launched ones had just so much sell pressure from investors. So I think it's incredibly important not to create that sell pressure. But I think that, just figure out a way to not create that sell pressure, but have a way of tying compensation because I think it's a good way of long-term alignment.
Agree.
I
100%.
think Ezra is a good point too, I think, because I think just to John's point about, I think that optics are very bad if the price is different than the bonding curve. But like companies buy back their own shares too, so I'm not sure like how we should think about that. Ezra, did you?
I wanted to. No, I mean, yeah, that's. I don't know. That was just an idea. I'm curious what people think, but I wanted to just add on one thing before the call ends. I'm not a super active member of the DAO, and I'm a bit of an observer, so I don't want to try to influence people too much. But I think it's actually really important what Augusto is saying about the fact that this DAO is positioned in kind of a new way in terms of the kind of global labor market, right? You really are going to come into conflict with the idea of people in different parts of the world expecting different salaries, and things like this where someone comes and asks for a certain amount and other people find it to be not the appropriate amount in both directions is probably going to happen a lot. And I think it will be really helpful if we try to build a culture of kind of respectful disagreement around these things, where like it's really encouraged to just come in and ask for whatever you think is appropriate, but then people are going to give you really honest feedback, and like it's just going to be, there's going to be conflict there, and it's okay, and like we'll find things that will be prices that I will accept, and hopefully avoid making people feel really offended and attacked around it, because this is something where that could easily happen, because it's nobody's fault that they're asking for what seems fair for where they live, and of course some people are going to do that, and we've really we're really hitting up against globalization in a really small microcosm. So it's I don't know, I can't think of another example where it's happening in such a personal way. So if we can build like a good culture around it, I feel like it's something we can handle in a healthy way and arrive at prices and such that like the DAO is okay with.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one thing I want to chime in on and add is this idea from a legal perspective, the idea that people who are contributors to making the DXdao, such as Omen, there isn't any kind of legal liability going after the group in general, because obviously who can they go after? But then there is talk, like say for example, Professor Aaron Wright, he's one of the lead figures in the legal industry in this regard. He writes that possibly developers can be held liable for creating any type of illegal activity if a court deems it that way. So another thing to take into consideration, that if you do live in a, like say for example, Western Europe or the US, where laws are much more aggressive, that's something also just to take into consideration, because we don't know how this can act and play out. But there is that hesitation, and that's obviously that's part of the legal perspective to tread carefully. But yeah, that's just wanted to chime in and throw that out there. And also other countries as well can go after it. I mean, we just don't know.
I just want to say that if I recall correctly, that thing was brought up about like holding developers accountable, and then there was such backlash of anything like that happening.
Right. Yeah, there hasn't been any backlash so far, but there's all these theories. Well, how can they enforce these laws, and how can they go after? I mean, it's all hypothetical at the moment. I mean, except for Ether Delta, for example, they went after the CEO, but then that's the CEO. There hasn't been with the DAOs. I mean, it's a whole new level of globalization we're in right now. So, yeah, just something just to throw out there.
Especially for Omen.
Right, Omen, and like it's a predictions market, and so the US is just prediction markets are not it's not looked down fairly here in the US. I'm not sure with other countries. So yeah, that's something just to throw in mind, because if you are working on this as a US developer, you want to just, I don't know, because also this is in the spirit of open source. So it's a conflict in itself, just from the legal perspective.
Okay, great. I guess we're at the hour here. Did anybody else want to make some comments? I think there's work to be done on the budgeting. I mean, I'd love to see, more kind of done around like what Chris started with the spreadsheet. Like maybe as a community we can come to some consensus there, and from there, I guess we can, I think, like Chris said, the treasury management probably follows from that, and I think the compensation is tightly related. Obviously, there's some things we need to figure out. And I guess the best way we have to do that right now is consensus in the forums and chat. And then, when people are ready, they can make the actual proposals to the DAO. And that's kind of the final say. So, anything else from anyone before we close?
I guess for those who are on the business development calls, I was wondering if you had some flexibility on other days of the week, like Monday or Tuesday, just so we can have the one or two people who can't do Fridays able to also join. Like if I remove the days, would you still be able to make them? I'll post it up again in Keybase. Let's talk about it. I'd love to hear feedback. And yeah, I was thinking maybe Monday for a business development call. So cool.
It's fine for me.
Awesome.
Yeah, maybe it makes sense to have call times rotate a little bit to accommodate different locations. Although I think there's a nice aspect to having the consistency. So maybe we pick a couple or something and alternate. Yeah. All right, guys.
Cool.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Good call. Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
guys.
Bye-bye.